Hi, everyone. When Rabbi's away, we'll all play. So I'm Ben Kreshtool, Synagogue's ritual director, here with Cantor Emily Ellentuck, our religious school director, filling in for the Parsha podcast this week. Hey, Emily.
Hey, this is going to be fun.
I know it's always good to sneak in and do a little Parsha study without Rabbi present. So maybe we can say objectionable things, or maybe not. I don't know. Although this parasha doesn't really leave a lot for objectionable material.
Not a lot.
But it was your bat mitzvah parsha.
It was. So I have, studied this one for many years.
As have I, but for different reasons, because I am obsessed with the Mishkan, as you know.
Yes. Is this your favorite parsha?
So I was saying this on Shabbat, and now I feel like I could talk about it freely without judgment. I would like to eliminate the book of Deuteronomy completely from the Torah, and I would like to create a new book of the Torah called Sefer HaMishkan, and I would like it to be the last couple chapters of Exodus and like the first chunk of Leviticus. Combine that into one, and that will be Sefer HaMishkan, and that's what I would really like.
So yes, this is one of your favorite parshas.
Yes. This material has always been of interest to me. I know this is like the part of the Torah that a lot of people sort of become disconnected to because it's dry. I'm putting that in air quotes for those of you who are just listening. It's a dry parasha because it's basically blueprints and construction materials and goes into very detailed descriptions of all of the implements of the Mishkan, the portable desert tabernacle, sanctuary, whatever you want to call it in English. And it's a lot.
It is. It's definitely a blueprint. And I have to say, when I was, 12 and studying for my bat mitzvah, I was really disappointed I didn't get a parsha that had people and story and drama like
one
Genesis
person
and Exodus. There is the name of Moshe in the very first pasuk, the very first sentence, and then the rest is God telling the people what to do and how to build. And like you said, there's a lot of building materials and gold and silver and copper and acacia wood and all sorts of materials. But buried just kind of in the middle of the parsha, it does mention one material that kind of stands out if you read through and you go, what? And to me, that is dolphin skin. You want to talk about why
it's very
dolphin
controversial.
Skin is mentioned
all right,
in the middle of the desert?
Here's my thought, and the rabbis also have a lot what to say about that. I actually brought a handy-dandy book about the Mishkan, specifically just in case we were going to talk about anything in here. And this is great because there's a lot of pictures in it. But if we go to the section of the skins...
Because goat skin I could see in the desert.
Yeah.
And I've heard explanations also about dolphin skin, but I am curious because this is your passion. What do you think about the dolphin skin?
Well, here, I don't believe dolphin skin to be actually that out of place because, I mean, we're close to the Red Sea. Mm-hmm. We know that in Egypt, there was dolphin skins were used as a covering for many things. It's not super weird when you think about it sort of in the context of where we are geographically and, where we come from historically, from Egypt. I mean, we come from Israel, but when we were in Egypt, we learned a lot from the Egyptians while we were there about how they did things and how they used materials. So dolphin skins isn't out of the ordinary. The question, though, is it actually a dolphin skin, right? Uh-huh. So the word in Hebrew that is being used is tachash. And modern Hebrew uses tachash, I think, to describe a dolphin or like some sort of sea creature. So our rabbis liked to talk about the tachash skin because they too were sort of a little confused by what it could be. And I'm having a hard time finding it here in this book.
So do you think it has to do with the element of waterproofing? Because dolphins have, technically waterproof skin. They're swimming around.
Yeah, I think you could have that, or just like a covering in general to sort of keep away not only just water, but also like the dusty of the desert. And, because all those other skins are, very pretty. And so one of the commentaries says that the tachash skin is supposed to be this multicolored, beautiful skin that like dazzles in the sun. Cantor Schuster is convinced the tachash is a unicorn. And I am of the opinion that it is, this is a classic rabbinical interpretation, that it is a sea creature who was created for this sole purpose, that God created the tachash so that its skin, for the time for when its skin would be needed to be used for the Mishkan, it no longer exists, it's now extinct. That's my sort of understanding.
So they would use the word dolphin just to give us the idea it was a special sea creature.
Yeah, I think yes is the answer to that. And now our Chumash, this Eitz Chaim Chumash, uses the term dolphin. Many other Chumashim I have seen just transliterate the word. They just say tachash skins. They don't even bother to translate it because we don't know. We're not sure exactly what animal it is, so it's easier to just sort of transliterate it than to try and go through all of these commentaries to figure out what is the tachash skin, what actually is that animal.
Okay.
But it is interesting.
So just the building in general, there's God saying, please, build me a sanctuary that I may dwell with you. And it gives me this question, why does God need a place to dwell? Does God need a place to dwell? Or do you think this is maybe a little bit more for the people and they needed something to do?
So I think it's interesting. The beginning of the parasha is actually, I think, where all of like the lessons maybe are located, because it says two things, right? One, it says that ve'asuli mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham, right? Build me a sanctuary and I will dwell b'tocham, which I've always translated as sort of within you. But a lot of the translations say
it's
like
a lot
among
of building
you.
If God's going to dwell within ourselves instead of a building.
Correct. And then the other thing it says that's interesting is that the people who gave gifts is kol asher yidvenu libo, give what your heart desires you to bring, and the people were inspired to give all of these materials. But that verse ve'asuli mikdash, and build for me a sanctuary that I might dwell among you or within you, or however you choose to sort of interpret that. What we're doing in the desert is nation building, right?
Yep.
We are essentially a bunch of like runaway slaves. We've been under the oppression of Egypt for so long, hundreds of years. And, now we've crossed the sea, we've received the Torah, right? And God, what God, I think, really wants us to do is understand how to put together all parts of a society. So with the Ten Commandments and Mishpatim, we're getting sort of the judicial side of the equation. And, for us, we're, also it's a political, religious people. And God wants us to understand correct worship. Now, we do get into sort of this idea of timeline, and there's a classic idea in rabbinical understanding called Ein Mukdam U'Meuchar BaTorah, that there's no chronology in the Torah. So some of our sages say that we actually get this Mishkan sort of as as a way to sort of recover and repair the break that was from the sin of the golden calf.
And prepare to receive the Ten Commandments.
Correct.
And somewhere to put them.
Also that as well, right? But I think for sure, as a way to repair the damage from the sin of the golden calf, God realizes, they don't really know what I mean when I say no idolatry.
Yeah.
So here, we're going to build this sanctuary, and this is how correct worship in the desert and how we'll move forward. This is how I want you to worship me. And the building, people need to see things. It's really hard to worship a deity that you can't see, which is one of the reasons why I think they turned to, the golden calf in the first place. And so this idea of this Mishkan as sort of the central location where they know God's presence will be, they know that God and Moshe will speak in there, and they know that that will be sort of this like anchor, the spiritual anchor.
So this is a lot more for the people to give them a place to feel connected to God. For
I think
them
so.
To invest both with their personal property and their time and their energy.
Yeah, definitely.
In the creation, so that it feels like an important place to them.
Yeah.
And to become a unified people.
Yes. But I also think that it's also important for God, one, because if it wasn't, God wouldn't do it. And then the other, there's many parallels to the creation of the world in the creation of the Mishkan, right? They call it a protoplasm of creation, is I think a term I saw once in a book. This idea that God created the world, God also now is instructing the creation of the Mishkan as sort of this like ultimate spiritual lock, and so with the parallels of creation, which we're not supposed to dwell too much on because we'll go crazy, it's, I think, also important for God in that way as well, to sort of, work this way and then bring everybody together. Like on Shabbat, it's now we have rest. it is a unifying factor, and it's part of the covenant. Our covenantal relationship with God. This is a sort of physical way to express that.
Sure. And, as you had said, these were a people that had been slaves for 400 years. They did not have a lot of autonomy. They didn't have the, ability yet to free think. So the need for a blueprint and the very, very specific details, how to build and how many cubits and what materials and how each thing should look, probably allowed them to do the actual building.
Yeah, right. So this is now labor of love as opposed to forced labor. Right. This is a building project that everybody can participate in and is responsible for, and everybody has a piece of themselves within it. And it's definitely sort of a new way for them to see, without the threat of Egyptian taskmasters, to look at that. It's like a new form of perfection for them, right? Because in Egypt, Pharaoh is God, right? Is a god,
Right.
and that type of being under that type of oppression is not pleasant. And now the people understanding, oh no, we have this God who performs miracles. He is, this God is our God, right? And we are, again, this is covenantal, right? We're a part of this, and for God to be able to give them that opportunity is a really beautiful sort of thing in this whole community-wide building project. And this is at the end something that they can say, we did this. We're very proud of this, and it's nice.
Yeah. So back to what you had mentioned with the golden calf and the idea that we should not have idolatry. What do you think about the cherubs on top of the Arona Kodesh, the Ark? They build these two cherubs that face each other, and we hear that, when the nation isn't getting along, they kind of look away from each other. They're embarrassed. But does that not feel idolatrous to you?
Not really, right? Because so now we're getting into sort of interesting territory.
Yeah.
The idea of angels. Rambam classifies a list of 9 or 10. I think it might be 9. But it's 9 or 10 classes of angels, and Kruvim are one of them, right? And Rambam teaches us that angels are, sort of, they're living beings that serve God, and Kruvim. God says he's going to speak to Moses from in between the two Kruvim, that space in between. I don't think it's really idolatrous because we're not worshiping them, and also God made the blueprint for it. So
Sure.
I feel like
And
if God
maybe
made it, then it's okay.
Maybe they're watching over the
But
10
right,
commandments
watching
in there.
over, or sort of a symbol of, like you said, sort of unity. It was traditionally understood that yes, if there was crisis in the nation, they would sort of turn away from each other. But the idea of these, heavenly celestial beings that serve God, to me, is not idolatrous. But some people definitely see it that way. Actually, what I think is more idolatrous is actually King Shlomo, Solomon, who put these gigantic Kruvim in addition to the Aron, the Ark, in the temple in Jerusalem. So that I think was actually probably worse. The fact that these are attached to the cover of the Aron, I don't find to be idolatrous. No.
Okay. So I know this is one of your favorite topics, and you have a big interest in the Mishkan. So
True.
if you were part of this building process, Ben, what would you want to focus on helping build?
Oh, it's such an interesting question.
I'll give you a second because
Yeah.
So for me, I always find the description of the menorah, which is a 7-branch menorah,
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yes.
With the almond blossom.
Yes, flowers and cups and calyxes and
Yeah, it
all
just
the
sounds so
things.
beautiful.
Yeah, I think I might agree with you there. I would probably be afraid of the Ark of the Covenant ever since I saw that movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, but also all the other things that happened
Based
to
on
people.
facts, right?
Well, it is based on facts. Uzziah touched it, touched the cart it was on and died. It's, I think I'd be afraid of that. But the menorah, I love, like you said, the description of the menorah is really beautiful. But also the symbolism that it holds about light, God's light. Also, there's parallels to creation in that as well.
Yep. 7 branches.
Right, 7 branches, 7 days, and all of these wonderful ideas sort of combined together. I might join you in creating the menorah. Are you a curved branched menorah person or a straight branched menorah person?
Such a good question. I know there's a lot of
Controversy
about which way. I happen to like the curved branches, but that's much more visual. I think that the straight branches would probably be easier to build.
Yes, but my thing is that almost all historical depictions of the menorah depict a curved branch menorah. It's only because the Rambam, in his commentary on the Mishnah or the Gemara, like drew a picture of it, and he drew with straight branches. But I only think that was because of space. He drew it like tiny in a margin of a book, and I think what he was really trying to show was the shape of all of the things on the branches themselves, not the shape of the branches. But Chabad took it and ran with
Yes,
it.
they did.
But I also am a curved branch menorah person myself. This book has, I think, both.
I've seen that in a lot
Yeah.
of books where they depict both possible versions of the menorah.
Yeah. I just every historical depiction of the menorah I have seen has had curved branches, and even Josephus said it had curved branches. But some people, whatever you choose, I think will be fine. And I think we're getting a signal from behind the glass.
Which hand is best to light the menorah with?
Which hand, Jeremy asks us, is best to light the menorah with? And I think that just depends on what hand you are. Are you left-handed or right-handed?
Neither. A
Neither.
candle.
Oh, that was bad. That was a bad joke. Minus 10 Rashi points to you, Jeremy.
Well, and to that, I would also say, when we're talking about the Hanukkah menorah, the Chanukiah, it is slightly different because we have candles, but the menorah that we're talking about in the Mishkan, the 7-branch menorah, they didn't have candles. This was an oil menorah,
Yes.
which is where we get the story of Hanukkah and the missing and the needed oil. It's because it was an oil menorah.
But if you go into the Gemara, it gives very explicit instructions for how to light this menorah, and it's not easy. It is like a very complicated procedure with, again, many steps and many details. And this, again, people sort of like, what's the point of all of that? And I, you'll pardon the pun, but devil is in the details. And the way we do things with care, with intent, and with proper respect for God, I think all of those things are necessary for creating sort of a sacred mindset to engage in sacred rituals.
Absolutely. The more you have to think about the right way to do something, it's not just giving us laws to make things harder.
Correct.
It's giving us the opportunity to think about
Correct.
why we're doing something and also be grateful for it.
Correct. And doing that puts us on a higher spiritual plane, I think. And that's what the tradition is asking of us. And in this time that we live without a temple, I think that's really our job. Part of our job is to really find ways to bring holiness into our lives, because the temple really did that for us for a long time. And now without it, it's important for us to be that mishkan, when, ourselves. When it says v'shachanti b'tocham, I think now that's more, than ever, that God dwells within us. We each can act as sort of a mishkan or a temple wherever we go, to bring that light of Torah and to bring that light of God into the world and to bring holiness wherever we go.
Absolutely.
And I think we're getting that 1 minute signal there, so it's time to wrap it up. 1/2 a minute. But thank you so much for joining, for letting us, Jeremy. Well, thank you for letting us jump in and take over for Rabbi and crash the podcast, which we always enjoy. It's always good to study Torah and learn with everyone. So we hope you enjoyed, and we hope that we will see you over the course of Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. See you in Shul.
Shabbat Shalom.